Hours to come and a bit of a breeze as well, adding to the chilly feel to things. Mostly dry across Northern Ireland, but also across northern England. In the east, it's looking pretty showery. Across the Midlands and much of Wales, a largely bright, fine start to the day, but in the far south of England, it is going to be cloudier and there will be some showery outbreaks, all in association with that front that pushed through overnight. Through the day, I am expecting more showers tomorrow than we saw through today, and with that then there's a greater chance of some heavy ones, even a few rumbles of thunder perhaps, and some more sleet and snow. Over modest higher ground we could see a bit settling to lower levels. A few flurries are possible. Temperatures are going to be lower than today, and that makes it feel pretty chilly, especially when you factor in that wind. As we go through Thursday then, more showers across eastern parts. Further west, a greater chance of staying dry because there is high pressure to the west of us, but that high pressure is going to take quite a while to push its way in. So Friday is still going to be showery for many, but eventually we see something a little bit drier, more settled in time for the weekend when we should have some sunshine around.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner. Problems heading towards Glasgow on the M8. Now, a lane's been closed off from junction 20 to 19, so as you head over the Kingston Bridge, obviously, a lorry's broken down, causing long queues back past junction 25, the Cardonald exit, and back onto the M77, looking at the cameras. In County Durham, the A1M is blocked southbound from 62 to 61, the Carville-Boburn stretch, following an accident. A lorry also flipped onto its side, hitting the centre reservation. On the M60 in Greater Manchester, one lane's closed clockwise just before junction 15 for the M61, a car's overturned and also broken down. On the M6 in Staffordshire, one lane's closed northbound from the Stafford services up to the Stoke-on-Trent exit, junction 15 for emergency repairs, and the A12 is closed out of Essex towards London. There's been a serious three-vehicle collision just before the M25 at Brook Street. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
We want to spruce up your spring with an incredible £17,777 in tax-free cash that you can spend however you like. But that's not all, as you'll also receive not one, but two brand new designer watches and a fabulous Mulberry handbag. For a chance to win the cash, 2 watches and a designer bag, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB12 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 4th of April. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience, because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word. Good evening. As Ukraine agrees to a 30-day ceasefire following talks in Saudi Arabia today, the big question, of course, is, will Putin's Russia accept? We'll also talk about a potential land grab from farmers, more anger in the rural communities, and we'll have a look at day one of the Cheltenham races. I'm afraid to say it looks like a very good day for the bookies. But before all of that, let's get the news with Sophia Wensler.
Now, Nigel, thank you. Good evening. Your headlines at 7 o'clock. Breaking in the last hour, Ukraine has agreed to accept a US proposal for a 30-day ceasefire with Russia after talks concluded today in Saudi Arabia. Meanwhile, the US says it will immediately restore intelligence sharing and security assistance to Ukraine, according to a joint statement. The US Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, spoke about the meeting, saying the ball is now in Russia's court.
Take this offer now to the Russians, and we hope that they'll say yes, that they'll say yes to peace. The ball is now in their court. And but again, the president's objective here is, number one, above everything else, he wants the war to end. And I think today Ukraine has taken a concrete step in that regard. We hope the Russians will reciprocate.
A 59-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of gross negligence manslaughter in connection with the North Sea collision yesterday between a cargo ship and a US military jet fuel tanker. It comes as the Coast Guard has now called off the search for a missing crew member, while emergency services rescue 36 crew members. In other news, triple killer Carl Clifford has been given a whole life order for the crossbow and knife murders of his ex-partner, Louise Hunt, her sister Hannah Hunt and her mother, Carol Hunt. 26-year-old Clifford, who refused to attend his sentencing today, was also found guilty of raping Louise before he killed her. Our GBNews Home and Security editor, Mark White, was outside the court today.
Carl Clifford was criticised by the judge, the police, prosecutors and most importantly by the family of his victims for the cowardice he showed in not attending court for the sentencing. In passing that sentence, the judge, Mr. Justice Bonathan, said, "The evidence I have heard shows you to be a jealous man, soaked in self-pity, a man who holds women in utter contempt. There was," he said, "only one sentence that was appropriate, and that was a whole life tariff. In other words, Carl Clifford will never taste freedom again."
Elsewhere, the Metropolitan Police has launched an investigation into the suspended Reform UK MP Rupert Lowe. The MP for Great Yarmouth was reported to police by Reform on Friday, with the party alleging that he made verbal threats against the chairman. A Met Police spokesman said the force had launched an investigation into an allegation of a series of verbal threats made by a 67-year-old man. Meanwhile, Mr. Lowe said he is willing to cooperate in any necessary investigation. He added the allegations are entirely untrue. And Canada's incoming Prime Minister, Mark Carney, has called the new tariffs on metal by Donald Trump an attack on Canadian workers, families and businesses. It comes after the US president said he will double his planned tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminium from 25% to 50%, coming into effect as of midnight. Trump says it's in retaliation for 25% tariffs Ontario placed on electricity it sends to northern US states. Meanwhile, Mr. Carney said he will keep tariffs in place until Americans show respect and commit to free trade. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Nigel.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good evening. I thought things might be heading in the right direction last night when Steve Witkoff, who is Trump's special envoy in the Middle East, said Zelensky has sent a letter to the president. He apologised for the whole incident that happened in the Oval Office. And I thought that on the eve of the talks that took place today in Saudi Arabia was potentially a good sign. Well, actually, I think it's a very, very good sign. Here was Marco Rubio, US Secretary of State, about an hour ago.
Offers to stop the shooting. The goal here is the only way out to end this war is to negotiate out of it. There's no military solution to this war. The solution to this war and the way to end it and to achieve the president's objective of peace is to negotiate. But before you can negotiate, you have to stop shooting at each other. And that's what the president has wanted to see, and that's the commitment we got today from the Ukrainian side, their willingness to do that. Obviously, now that'll be delivered to the Russians. It'll be delivered to them directly through multiple channels.
Furthermore, the pressure that was being put on Ukraine from America has eased to a very large extent as the intelligence sharing ban has gone and weapons shipments will be resumed. So I guess the ball now is very much in the court of Putin and Russia. Will Putin accept the ceasefire deal? Tweet #Farage on GB News or email farage@gbnews.com. I'm joined down the line from Kyiv by Alexei Goncharenko, Ukrainian MP. And I wonder, Alexei, do you welcome this news?
Hello, Nigel. Great evening, great news. I absolutely welcome it. I am really happy. That's a very, very great news. We need to have peace in Ukraine as soon as possible. And today we made a big step in this direction. Yeah, and you're absolutely right. Now its ball is on Russia's side. I think now it will be a hard time for American team because Putin doesn't want any peace. But now we will see how United States can pressure. And I believe that President Trump can really deliver it. Absolutely, can use everything needed just to make Putin to accept the peace.
Yeah, I mean, what we've seen in the West is we've seen a lot of pressure put on Zelensky, and certainly the withdrawal of intelligence sharing, etc. And you could see that Trump was trying to drive Zelensky to the table. What we've not heard really very much about at all is what pressure is now being put on Putin. Do you have any idea of what the American president might be saying to Putin? Or do you have a feeling, as some critics in this country do, that he's thus far made it much, much too easy for the Russians?
I think that I don't have just feelings. I have some information that in reality, there was a lot of public pressure on Ukraine. That's true. But already it was a lot of not public pressure on Russia. And before this, Russia played the game, we are ready, but look, Ukrainians, they don't want. Now they don't have this excuse anymore. And now we will see reality. And in this reality, Putin will try to drag his feet. He will try to avoid meetings and to win some time because he really doesn't want peace. But again, I know that President Trump is very serious about reaching the peace. And I want to believe him that he will manage to do this. That's what we need. That's really what Ukraine needs, real peace, not surrender, but peace.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much indeed for joining us live this evening.
And I hope soon we will have peace. And I want to invite you, Nigel, to Ukraine. And after peace will be achieved. I think that will be great, and we will be happy to host you, me personally, and not just me. Many people in Ukraine.
I accept, unconditionally. I accept.
It's a deal.
It's a deal. Thank you. Well, there's one peace deal. I'm joined in the studio by Sir Reynold Giles Warden, a former Conservative MP and Minister, and Joe Phillips, journalist and former spin doctor. He really was upbeat.
Yeah, I mean, this has been clearly...
there was joy there.
That's right. I mean, this has clearly been a real upheaval for the Ukrainian government, the Ukrainian people, since President Trump entered the White House. Some unexpected steps for them from President Trump's actions. But I think what we're seeing here is some progress, which is very welcome. And now it is ball in Putin's court. There is a credible deal, I'm sure, that can be reached. And, a negotiation is how any conflict like this is going to end.
Or annihilation.
True, and that no one wants to see that on either side because
or an endless stalemate.
That's just countless lives lost.
Because I did think the one thing that Rubio said and we listened to 30 seconds of it, but the one thing Rubio said there was there is no military solution in sight, and that is true, isn't it?
Other than, as I'm afraid Vladimir Putin has been doing, literally pushing young men to the border, to their death, and continuing to do that.
Attritional war, Joe, like the 1418 war, almost, the way that...
Absolutely.
Drones being almost the only difference, really.
Yeah.
I mean, I know there's been a lot of criticism of Trump, and he's been very tough on Zelensky, publicly very tough on Zelensky.
I think he's been appalling.
And, and a lot of people take that view. A lot of people think that he bullied him in the White House, etc., the withdrawal of intelligence sharing, all of that. Maybe it needed that to get to this point.
It maybe needed somebody to come in and say, right, this can't go on, for sure. It didn't need to humiliate a person who has been incredibly, brave, and and the fact that he's had to apologise and
maybe he wasn't ready for this.
Who? Zelensky?
Maybe Zelensky wasn't ready for this.
Well, I don't think he expected it. I mean, he certainly wasn't expecting to become a war leader when he stood for election.
No.
But, I think, as we've all agreed, it is now down to Putin, and we'll see what happens. But I think, as Alexei was just saying, this is not just about peace at any cost. It's got to be proper peace, not surrender.
Yes, I mean, the argument is that the only grown-up negotiation happens during a ceasefire, and I think that's right. Otherwise, if you have negotiations going on, whilst talks are going on, the likelihood is actually it would intensify.
Yes, and
on both sides.
And in a way, we've seen that in the last 48 hours, haven't we? I mean,
a big drone attack into Moscow.
At the same time as America withdrew its intelligence sharing. Now, we know there was a loss of armaments on the Polish border, which presumably can now go. And we presume also that this is a ceasefire for sea and air only. Do we? Or do we not have that detail?
We haven't got the details. I mean, we just have. I mean, a ceasefire is a ceasefire.
Yeah.
So I think you have to assume that it's all three theatres. It's interesting what Alexei said. The biggest criticism of Trump is that he swallowed the Russian line. He's supporting Putin. The only comment that Trump has made is, "I've said things to Putin that only I can know and I can say." And in terms of how we view this in this country, he's got to get something back from Putin too, hasn't he?
Well, yes, and Putin has got to get something. He's already got Crimea, which he is...
And that's not going back, is it?
And, we should take responsibility for that as well in the West, because we let that happen. We didn't do anything about it. We just went, oh, that's a bit naughty, and looked the other way, as we have done so many times. But what does he want as well? Does he want the Donetsk region? And what is the deal on the minerals, which, Trump's figures are absolutely ludicrous. He reckons it's going to be worth 10 times more than the entire world supply of not rare earths.
Well, he does tend to exaggerate his figures ever so slightly.
That's a polite way.
However, what I will say is normally when a big foreign mining company goes into a country that might be underdeveloped, the big mining company gets 80 to 90% of the economic benefit, and the country then left behind gets, a very small portion. This actually is a 50-50 deal. This is, if this works, for Ukraine, it's terrific.
Yeah, well, let's hope, because, those people have been through enough.
Yeah.
And as Ranald said, there are too many people who have died on both sides. And it needs to stop, and then there needs to be rebuilding and, a future for Ukraine. But, their future, whether it's in the EU or in NATO, is still very much in the balance, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's impossible for them to join the EU, as they currently are. It just wouldn't work with the European model.
America will say no to NATO.
Yeah, I thought they'd use NATO as a negotiating weapon with the Russians, but it appears the Americans have dropped that pretty early.
So I think it's more potentially the EU is the negotiating sort of territory now.
But how can they join, Ranald? I mean, how would they fit, any of the harmonisation?
Well, all the countries that do join go through a process. Turkey's still in that process, right? It's in a customs union. It can trade more freely with the rest of the EU. It has to adopt certain standards for doing that, and it has to take those from the EU. Ukraine could be in a similar position. Who knows? It could be part of a journey for them. Clearly, NATO's off the table, so maybe that's the negotiating space right now. And, that could help with Ukraine's rebuilding, if that's something that they want. But equally, that will be a discussion that needs to come out of these negotiations with Putin when, hopefully, he does come to the table and they get grown up about this.
Yeah, and part of that negotiation, as Joe quite rightly says, territory clearly is going to be key, but equally guarantees, Ukraine will be looking for guarantees, and we also will be saying, well, we've got to do something here to make sure this man doesn't do it again. I get a feeling a couple of weeks on that the idea of British boots on the ground just doesn't have any public support.
It's looking less and less likely because I think people have woken up to the fact that we haven't got the men anymore, or men and women anymore. The army is too small to be able to staff that over a long period of time, which is what we would need here. And I'm not usually a fan of the UN, but on this, actually, potentially, it might require that sort of UN mandate.
The UN, of course, did this in Korea. We go way back to 1953. But isn't the difficulty that actually Russia's on the Security Council, so it couldn't be UN?
Well, and also you've got America, who decided to vote with Belarus and North Korea. But you had the UN in Bosnia, you know, and that was actually... I know things aren't that great there at the moment, but it was quite successful for a period. And that was many factions.
I mean, the Prime Minister said, you know, the Prime Minister, he talked about the coalition of the willing. Same phrase we used back in the Iraq War, funnily enough. And, 20 countries are going to join, but it needs someone to bring it together,
Well, and also
doesn't it?
you need to know what the plan is. You know, you can't
what's
just...
the exit strategy?
Exactly. You can't do what we did to Iraq. You can't do what happened in Afghanistan. You've got to know what you're doing.
Well, and that's the warning, isn't it? The warning, folks, is there are still 25,000 American troops on the border in Korea, and that's over 70 years later, and that's the fear.
Absolutely, absolutely. And, you know, look at Greece and Cyprus.
No easy answers. Final thought, Ranel, on this segment. Quite a good day for Trump.
Clearly, some of us might have not taken the path that he did.
No, just one, absolutely.
but credit where credit's due. This has brought this the conclusion of this war closer to its end point than we have been at any point in the last few years.
No, I agree with that.
Let's see whether there's a promise of regime change.
Well, at least we've got a start.
We've got
at
a
least
start,
it's a step in the right direction. And I've been invited to Kyiv when it's all over to have a good time with Alexei.
We were too.
No, I don't think so. I think it's just me. In a moment, once again, the rural communities are feeling very, very unhappy indeed. They're worried there's going to be a land grab from government. They're not going to get proper compensation. We'll debate that after the break.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes. Thank you for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Britain's Newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
So many people I know this applies to. We are terrified of driving in that because you're literally getting blinded now. What's going on here?
You are. I'm going to be a little bit contentious, though, and say that bright headlights have actually come about in order to make roads safer. Because if, like me, you've had experience of driving older cars, you'll know just how appalling the older style headlights can be. And in fact, you know, you can't actually see very clearly the road ahead. So the new xenon and LED headlight technology actually stemmed from a racing background when cars were racing at night in order to make the roads brighter. Now, I'm not saying that it's not a problem for drivers, but I do sort of think that, you know, this possibly could be part of the whole culture of people liking to have something to complain about. And they kind of need to learn, and I think this really should be part of the driving test. You need to learn how to drive at night and not to look directly into the headlights that are coming towards you.
But the RAC survey also shows, Amanda, that it suggests that there's been at least 200 road accidents which could be directly attributed to people being dazzled by the light. So that can't be good.
No, exactly. And I mean, I'm not belittling the accidents, and I'm certainly not belittling the people who have problems, particularly things like cataracts, which can really be a problem for nighttime driving. And it is a really serious problem when it comes to safety, admittedly. But again, I just feel that, you know, bright headlights actually essentially make the road safer. We've got far more people travelling on the roads these days than we've ever had at any point in history. And so by virtue of the fact, we are going to see these numbers rising because, of course, there are going to be more people who are going to be dazzled by the headlights.
The People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Some of your thoughts on my question, will Putin and Russia accept the Ukrainian offer of a 30-day ceasefire? Richard says, it's all very well for Ukraine to now want a ceasefire, but they have just launched an attack on Moscow. Well, that's true, but they've actually been attacking each other, to be fair. Laurie says, I don't believe Russia will accept a 30-day ceasefire. Putin wants to annihilate Ukraine. Well, if he doesn't, he will be even more isolated internationally than he's ever been before. Alan says, love him or loathe him, Trump shows how to get things done in 6 weeks. Starmer is not in the same league. I'm not sure that's relevant, but anyway. So we are facing the planning and infrastructure bill coming from this government, a government that is committed to building 1.5 million homes in the lifetime of this parliament. Same target the last government had, but they seem even more determined. And, of course, to build an awful lot of solar farms too. Well, ahead of this legislation being fully debated, we saw Matthew Pennycook, the minister, out on the TV rounds this morning.
It won't be for ministers to decide what land is unlocked. It'll be for local authorities in any particular area to use these powers where they think it's appropriate. But we do want to make it easier for them to do so. We want to make the process more efficient. We want to reduce administration costs so that we can get greater use of these powers and enable more land to be unlocked, more land to be assembled effectively. But I see the real potential for these powers primarily in urban areas on previously developed brownfield land where regeneration projects can come forward, often really effectively.
Well, you can believe the minister if you want to. I have to say, my understanding of the planning and infrastructure bill is that actually local councils will lose many of their democratic rights, and actually government can basically overturn the whole thing, use compulsory purchase in a way that it's frankly, or scale that it's never been used before, and pay farmers far less than the potential land value if they were to be turned over to housing. Douglas Turner is a livestock farmer from Berkshire. Douglas, you've obviously looked very carefully at this. It has sort of 2 points for me. One, the element of local democracy. I mean, why bother to vote for a local council if they haven't got the powers? And two, when it comes to your land, how do you see this?
Well, this is what they've tried to do, Nigel. They want to take the land away from us. It is a land grab. You cannot have a compulsory purchase. We are farmers. You need to save British farming. We need to grow food on there, not to put houses. So if they're only going to give us, let's say, £10,000 an acre, and on an acre they put 10 houses, and minimum, for argument's sake, they sell those houses at £100,000 each, that's £1 million. Who's got the other £900,000 or more? The builders. Who are the builders? Are they their friends? This is what happens. We get these, they say they're democratic and they want to help us, but since they've been in government, they've taken away the money from the pensioners, they've taken the money away from soldiers' wives when they're deceased, they're taking the money away from the farmers, and now they want to take our land away from us as well. Do they not understand?
Is that literally how it feels to you?
That's how it feels to all of us. Yeah, they want to take our land away from us because before the budget, who did they have in number 10? We're not knowing what they said, but it was Bill Gates and it was Larry Fink of BlackRock and Vanguard. They want to buy up all the land. They, with Merrill Lynch, have put up a fund for over 100 million plus to actually buy the farmland. We have got to sell it. You wouldn't expect a fisherman to sell his fishing boat to pass it on to the family, would you? We have to have the land to grow the food. And we grow the best food in the world. With the British farmers. No one farms it better.
So you've got that, you've got AHT. Does it really feel like an attack on the rural community?
Oh, it is, because also we've got many others. We've got APR, we've got BPR, we've got SFI, you've got all these things. They are hurdles we've got to jump through. The hurdle keeps being made higher, the goalposts keep putting further away from us all the time, and we do all the exercises and things, and we should be out there looking after the land. We're the custodians. We grow the food to feed the people. If you want security and you want people, you've got to be able to grow the food for them. When Angela Rayner says that she wants to be able to go out and build all these houses, I've actually found a builder for her. He can build all those houses. His name's Lego.
Joe comes from a farming background. Do you sympathise with what Douglas is saying?
I think the most important thing is how are we going to be resilient? We talked just at the top of the programme about the threat, or not so bad maybe, of war, but it is imminent. We live on an island. We import so much of our food, and one of the things that we need to have is resilience in every walk of life. There's a report out today from Policy Exchange, which is a fairly influential think tank, about the need for us to have food security. If we don't have food security, basically, we're stuffed. And we saw it with the invasion of Ukraine at the beginning. I know we talked about this last week. You know, all of a sudden we realised where all...
Oh, 80% of cooking oil came from there. Yeah. No, we didn't know. We didn't know.
You know, and every now and again, all of a sudden olive oil goes up, or all the things that we take in from other countries that we can't grow here. But we have to retain... I just want to ask you, Douglas, do you think there should be a regrading of protection of Grade 1 arable land? I mean, I know Matthew Pennicott was talking about brownfield sites, which makes sense, and most people would agree with that. But do you think that Grade 1 arable protection needs to be extended?
It does, and also there's lots of brownfield sites. There's lots of old sites which have not been developed, which building companies have land banked all the time. They could go out there and build them. They don't want to because their house price has come down. They won't be making the profits that they've achieved all the time. And we have to go out, and when they say, the farmers have got to do more with less, we've always done that. We've always put in the hours. We have a passion. We want to grow food. We want to feed the country. Unfortunately, when we've been out sometimes, and Nigel's been there with us down at Whitehall, and they say, we don't need the farmers, we can go to the supermarkets. This is what the problem we're up against all the time. They think they can go to the supermarket. They don't realise the farmer makes it happen before it can go to the supermarket.
It's where these kids' farms around the place are a very good idea. They actually find out where milk comes from. Ranald, you were part of that last government. You had a target to build 1.5 million houses. You failed completely. I guess the one counter to what Douglas is saying, and he's arguing there are brownfield sites, but they have to put these homes somewhere.
Well, part of the last government's pledge was to have local accountability, and that's what's being removed as part of this, so that councillors, as you said at the top of this section, won't have the ability to veto things. Now, we elect local councillors to come up with the right decisions for localities, so if that's being removed, that's very troubling. But I think there's a broader issue here as well around the big number. So, you know, the last government said that there should be a bottom-up approach. Both the Liberal Democrat manifesto and the Labour manifesto talked about new towns, and I think that's the thing here that they're not talking about, that they want to assemble large tracts of land so that they can build new towns around the country, and that's the only reason I can think of in my mind as to why you'd need these powers, because for brownfield, yes, but if they're not specifying previously developed land, it must be because they want to build new towns all over the country.
I think that may well be right. And what about Douglas's point very quickly that, you know, Bill Gates and some of the richest people in the world have been in Downing Street and are looking to buy up British land? Is he right?
I think he's absolutely right that with the removal of the inheritance tax relief, the family farm tax that is happening under Labour, that will be exactly what happens. Big corporations, large investors come in and buy up the British countryside. No one wants to see that, and I think the government really does need to think again.
Can I just say that I don't think the government is the government there for us. There's an old term, it's called quoker wodger, and what that is, it used to be in the 18th century, it was a wooden puppet. It's also seen in politics of being a politician that instead of looking after his constituents, looks after a third party. And this is the way we feel that it's happening, because every time they come out with something, it's not for the people. So when they want compulsory purchase...
You think the quoker wodgers are in the sort of pocket of the big developers?
Absolutely.
Basically what you're saying.
Yes.
Well, we can't absolutely prove that's right or
Well, they're not here to defend themselves, are they?
Well, we don't want to get sued by the big building firms, but you've made the point. Final thought on all of this. You know, whether it's this, whether it's the massive increase in the cost and difficulty of renewing shotgun licences, whether it's the proposed ban on people riding horses and jumping fences behind a trail. It seems to me, Douglas, that, and one of the reasons I've come and supported all the farmers' events that you've done, there are nearly 100 Labour MPs that represent rural or semi-rural seats, in most cases for the first time in British political history. If you guys in the countryside are really properly organised and are campaigning in those market towns with Labour MPs, you would get change. Is enough of that happening?
It is. We have 40 of them already. And when they say they want to do compulsory purchase, I would like to see compulsory impeachment. I know it's not been here since the 18th century, and I think it was Warren Hastings, but I think it's got to be fair. They can't have it all, and they keep taking it all. And we must feed the country.
You just had a wonderful example there of the difference between Eton-educated politicians in London and people from the countryside who talk about quoker wodgers impeachment. It's been a delight to have you on. And keep campaigning, please. In a moment, let's talk about benefits. The numbers of people on benefits are soaring. The cost is becoming totally unaffordable. The Prime Minister has said we've got to cut down on the number of benefit claimants, and I absolutely agree with him. Trouble is it possible when you're running a Labour government?
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
Storm Yana brings heavy rain and also risk of thunderstorms to western and central parts of the Mediterranean, but further east it's mostly settled. Outbreaks of rain just starting to clip into parts of Tenerife, also southern parts of Portugal and Spain, but the bulk of the heaviest rain across central parts of the Mediterranean, where we're still seeing a risk of thunderstorms as we head through into Wednesday. Largely settled across Greece though, and remaining settled for the rest of the week, and this is where we'll see the best of the temperatures, but elsewhere still a risk of showers and temperatures in the mid-teens.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
Britain's newsroom. Weekday mornings from 9:30.
Aaron, this is a mad idea.
The future is bold. The future is hard, and it requires mad ideas. And we're proud to be bold and thought-provoking.
How are you going to make money out of this?
Well, the Olympics make $4.5 billion in revenue per Olympic cycle, and they're a wildly profitable organization that has never been challenged. So we're very proud to take them on and create something better and more efficient. It's not well known, but 44% of Olympians admit to using banned performance-enhancing substances, according to research funded by the International Olympic Committee and published in a top-tier scientific journal. It's absolutely rife. So 44% of elite athletes admit to using banned substances, only 1% get caught.
Would this not encourage the production of harder drugs, though? You know, steroids that go that bit further?
Absolutely, right? And the goal is to create an environment where research and development are openly celebrated rather than being done in secret. When things are done in the open, we can study those compounds, and the drugs that allow athletes to run faster and jump higher are the same drugs that will allow all of us to be younger and faster and stronger for longer.
If, as you say, 44% of Olympians are actually using this stuff anyway, secretly behind the scenes in a sort of hidden and unregulated way, would it actually look that much different to you or I sitting in the stand watching people run 100 metres? Would they actually do it much faster?
Yeah, because you could have athletes who are in their 30s, maybe even in their 40s, breaking world records. And we're already seeing that with our athletes that we have in training. It's absolutely exceptional. If almost half of Olympians are already using banned substances, they're doing so in secret. They're not using the best available compounds. They're not doing it under clinical supervision. They're doing it to beat the drug testing, not to optimize their results.
The People's Channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons,
Very, very curious.
we bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
So Work and Pension Secretary Liz Kendall was expected today to announce a bit of a crackdown on benefits. And boy, is it needed when you think about it. In just 8 years, the number of people claiming out-of-work benefits has risen from 3.63 million to 5.95 million. And we can look at those who are on personal independence payments, we can look at those on disability benefits, etc., etc., etc. I mean, it's absolutely stunning in a way, isn't it, that those of working age not working is 10 million people. I mean, it's absolutely extraordinary figure. So the Prime Minister, who's had this sort of big, quite shift it seems, politically over the course of the last few weeks. Now saying we've got to crack on, but Liz Kendall has delayed it. And she's delayed it until next week. And the reason is about 80 Labour MPs are objecting. And there are many, many, many from the charity sector, etc., complaining. And you can bet your life inside Whitehall, there are many complaining too. It was once described to me as, think of a great big Alsatian in front of you. Now, you've got a bone on the table. You don't have to give that bone to the Alsatian. But if you do, try and get the bone back. Because it's a very, very difficult thing. And, Joe, that's the analogy, isn't it? Whatever gets added on to the welfare system, often for people who desperately need it, but increasingly, it seems to me, on the numbers for those that perhaps don't, it's very tough to change. And I think for a Labour Prime Minister, this is really difficult.
Well, you know, and good for him for trying, because it has got to come down. And, you know, the next thing will be that they seriously need to look at the triple lock on pensions, which will cause an absolute outcry. But, you know, we've just been talking about farming. We know the government has not listened to the genuine concerns of family farms. We know they have not listened to the concerns of businesses, despite the fact they did before the election. If they're going to do this, because you only get one hit at this, particularly with a Labour government, you have got to do it really sensibly and really properly focused. So, you know, there are things like the personal independence allowance, which are hugely important to people who've got some you know, illnesses or diseases and things like multiple sclerosis or cystic fibrosis. That allows them to perhaps have a taxi on the day that they aren't able to drive or something like that. So those sort of things are quite flexible. But there is nothing going on in job centres about getting people into work. There's nothing also, then it seems to me that this needs to be tied up, and the clue is in Department of Work and Pensions.
Wow.
You know, we've got a shortage of 25,000 bricklayers. Where is anything happening?
I know, and they reckon, Ranald, that the bill for people of working age on long-term sickness and disability could be as high as £70 billion by 2030. That's about one in every... 25% basically of all income tax. And you were in government. Now, of course, let's make one thing very clear. It's the pandemic that made this considerably worse. The effect of lockdown, the psychological attitude towards working, had a big impact, didn't it?
That may be part of it, but I actually go further back, and I think it's important to be very honest about this. I think, you know, we should have taken tougher decisions on this as well, and I remember some of those early conversations with George Osborne and David Cameron, remember them? And, you know, they wanted to go further, but as you said a minute ago, there's so many people as part of the, you know, charitable sector, campaigners, lobbyists who try and stop this, many of whom are funded by the government to lobby the government to stop government taking decisions that the British people want them to take. And I think, you know, if Keir Starmer is serious about taking them on, then good luck to him. These are big, important decisions that will help fund our national defence and countless other things.
But it's a terribly tough thing. Changing the status quo is always hard, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. But, you know, we know how important it is for people to work when it is possible for them to work. Because otherwise, why have we had people marching and campaigning against unemployment in the 80s and a long time ago before?
I know.
We need to get back into that thing.
It's not even just these benefits, it's things like Motability and so on, which have ballooned in recent years. So we've got to look at all of these things in the round.
You've got to do it really sensibly instead of, you know, the terrible...
I just wonder whether you can do it as a Labour government, albeit with a big majority. I just wonder whether you can do it without some sort of manifesto commitment.
Well, in some ways it's easier for Labour.
Well, yeah, but how big's the rebellion going to be?
Well, it won't be that big.
And
There'll be a lot, but if they come out,
the truth is,
they say, but we're going to create.
Their majority is so big, they'll probably get away.
Exactly.
Now, one story, folks, that is not getting anything like enough coverage is the situation in Syria, and I'm joined down the line by Patrick Karakakos, I hope that's the right pronunciation, special correspondent at the Daily Mail and host of a weekly global podcast called Apocalypse Now. And David, thank you for joining us. I bet you 90% of the British population are wholly unaware of what has happened in the last 3 or 4 days in Syria. So please, do tell us.
Evening, Nigel. So
events have sadly gone very bad in Syria recently. I was there at the beginning of last month. There was a lot of hope. Obviously, Bashar al-Assad, a brutal tyrant, was overthrown at the end of last year. A new government headed by a man called Ahmad al-Sharaa is a former jihadist, in fact. He was the leader of al-Qaeda in Syria, took control. He said the right things, and things on the ground were calm. In the early stages when they defeated Assad's forces, they were, I was getting reports from the ground that they were treating people well. But things, unfortunately, over the last few days have unraveled. It started with former Assad regime loyalists attacking government checkpoints. And in terms of retaliation, we've now seen what looks like the massacre of hundreds of people, mainly Alawite, depending on who you speak to, Shia sect or a slightly different branch of Islam. And these include women and children. I myself have seen videos, I haven't been able to independently verify all of them, of corpses being, people being run over in the street and, vans reversing back and forth over their bodies. I've seen, men being forced to crawl on the ground, being barked at as animals. So right now, we've seen that the government is trying to keep control of things. There was a very positive sign in that they've come to a deal with the Kurds, who, of course, have an semi-autonomous province in the country's northeast. But on the ground, things are not great. I'm also seeing footage of chanting in Damascus, very sectarian, anti-Alawite chanting. So we still hope that they can hold it together. But as I wrote today in a big double-page feature in the Mail, things on the ground, very, very dangerous. It could descend to civil war if things don't change.
David, thank you for joining us and giving us that brief. I promise you most people will be hearing that for the first time. Thank you. Well, I say thank you. It's pretty ghastly, isn't it?
Yes, it's awful. And I think we were also hopeful, at the fall of Assad. And we talked about it quite a lot on the programme.
We did. We did.
Because we all hoped, but we knew that it would be a fragile hope. And this does appear to be. But the awful thing is, and good for us for airing it tonight, because it isn't getting the coverage. No. But it's almost impossible, Nigel, for people to keep... You've got Ukraine, you've got Gaza, you've got Democratic Republic of Congo, and you've got Syria. But Syria is so important. It is so important to the Middle East, which is, as we know, on eggshells.
It just goes to show, doesn't it? I remember back in 2013, the Cameron government lost a major vote on Syrian intervention, and thank goodness, in my opinion, picking the good guys and the bad guys in the Middle East is virtually impossible.
It never works, sadly. I mean, we've seen Syria, Libya, Iraq. We might not like the guys that were there. I'm not commending Assad, I'm not commending Saddam Hussein or Gaddafi. But, the point is that it's always a question of be careful what you wish for and what comes next. And as we've seen again, sadly, here in Syria, what comes next is seldom better than what came before. And unless you have the capability, like our conversation about Ukraine, to put boots on the ground for the long term, you can't police these things.
But there is a better relationship internationally than there was with Assad. I mean, we were all conned, self-included, by Assad.
Well, for now, Joe, we'll see what that is in a year's time, I tell you what, let's do something a bit happier, shall we? In a moment, we're going to be joined by Derek Tomo Thompson. We're going to talk about the first day of the Cheltenham Festival, which I fear was a very good day for the bookmakers.
Hello, very good evening to you. Here's your latest Met Office weather update for GB News. Now, it is going to be a bit of a chilly night ahead, and with that then, there's the risk of some frost, even some icy patches, as there will be quite a few showers around. A lot of the showers in association with a cold front that's making its way southwards, so we will see some showery pulses across parts of Northern Ireland through the end of the day, and also feeding into parts of perhaps the Midlands, but also across Wales. Quite a few showery outbreaks here, some sleet or snow over some higher ground possible. Also plenty of showers piling in across eastern parts of Scotland, northeast England, and again some sleet or snow likely here. Temperatures are going to drop, and where we get clear skies, dipping to around, if not a bit below freezing. So so there could be a bit of frost around first thing tomorrow morning, also some icy stretches, so do take care on the roads. Otherwise, as we go through the morning, in the west of Scotland, it's looking largely dry, quite bright as well. Further east, more showers to come and a bit of a breeze as well, adding to the chilly feel to things. Mostly dry across Northern Ireland, but also across northern England. In the east, it's looking pretty showery. Across the Midlands and much of Wales, a largely bright, fine start to the day, but in the far south of England, it is going to be cloudier and there will be some showery outbreaks, all in association with that front that pushed through overnight. Through the day, I am expecting more showers tomorrow than we saw through today, and with that then there's a greater chance of some heavy ones, even a few rumbles of thunder perhaps, and some more sleet and snow. Over modest higher ground we could see a bit settling to lower levels. A few flurries are possible. Temperatures are going to be lower than today, and that makes it feel pretty chilly, especially when you factor in that wind. As we go through Thursday then, more showers across eastern parts. Further west, a greater chance of staying dry because there is high pressure to the west of us, but that high pressure is going to take quite a while to push its way in. So Friday is still going to be showery for many, but eventually we see something a little bit drier, more settled in time for the weekend when we should have some sunshine around.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
It's day one of the Cheltenham Festival. This absolutely is the great jump racing festival of the year. Yes, I know the Grand National's a wonderful race, but this really is the meeting. Now, sadly, some of us have to work, although I will be there on Friday, Gold Cup Day, and absolutely can't wait. Now, we're not here to encourage you to bet on horses, though doing it moderately is a bit of fun. I have to say, my friend Derek Chisora, the heavyweight boxer, appeared on one of the TV channels today and backed a horse and said you should put your house on it, at which the television company had kittens. But I'm joined now, down the line, live from Cheltenham, by Derek Tomo Thompson. How are you?
I'm well. Did the horse win?
No, but I mean, now, Derek, wasn't extraordinary? And, you know, as I said, having a few quid on a horse for a bit of fun, it's great. It's proper innocent fun, and a day at the races, fantastic. But, you know, the Champion Hurdle, you know, the really big race of today, and Constitution Hill. Someone said to me this morning, it might be 11 to 8 on, Nigel, but do yourself a favour and get on Constitution Hill.
Yeah.
Just tell us what happened.
Well, we all thought he was virtually unbeatable because no horse has ever beaten him before. But today he fell, unfortunately. He was going well at the time at the halfway stage. Horse and jockey are okay. They might be a bit stiff, might be a bit sore, but they are okay. And of course, as we always say, if you don't jump, you don't win. It's as simple as that. You've got to. But it's so disappointing for Nicky Henderson, you know, the trainer. And you produce the horse, you train all the stable staff, getting this horse right, and then, unfortunately, he falls. So the winner last year, a horse called State Man, then took it up, turning for home. And he went clear. And all he had to do was jump the last flight and win. But he fell. He came down as well. And this left a 25 to 1 shot called, let me get the name of it because you could remember, Golden Ace.
Golden Ace.
Golden Ace. 25 to 1. Jeremy Scott, I think it was Jeremy's first ever run as a trainer in the Champion Hurdle. Lorcan Williams, who was born in Wales, was the man on board, 25 to 1. And he beat the 33 to 1, 50 to 1 outsider, Burdett Road, into second place. So it was first 25 to 1, second 33 to 1. And I did have a couple of pound each way on the winner because I thought if there's anything wrong with the favourite, he would have a good chance. And look at the people who were there waiting for the horse to come back into the winner's enclosure.
Yeah, amazing. And the third place horse was a very, very long shot of over 100 to 1. Amazing. Now, Derek,
incredible.
Extraordinary. But just goes to show folks at home, even if you're certain of a horse, don't put your house on it.
Never.
It's a 4-day festival. I'm coming on Friday, so I hope to see you there because it's a wonderful day. How are the crowds looking this year? Because the cost of living, really pinching. Day at the races, a fabulous thing to do, but not a cheap thing to do. How have the crowds been?
Well, it's interesting you asked that because last year I think they were selling Guinness at about £9 a pint, which, as you and I know, is very expensive. So one of the first things I did today was check the cost in the Guinness village of a pint of Guinness, and it was £7.50. So that is sort of bringing it down into possible terms. Mind you, if you go to Benidorm and watch it there, it's €4. So and it's probably a bit warmer there. So today there was a good crowd there, slightly down apparently on last year, but to me it was a massive crowd. There was a good atmosphere. 2 of the expected 4 favourites won. The other 2 got beat. So the bookies had a good day.
Yeah.
Some people had a good day. But I must just tell you, earlier on, in the Arkle Chase, which produced one of the best finishes I've ever seen at the Cheltenham Festival. Arkle, as we know, was a great 3 times winner way back before even you were born. Shows you how long ago that was. and it was great. 3 horses jumped the last in front. And then a horse who was about 10 lengths down called Django Bay came on to win for Nicky Anderson and Nico de Boinville, which was incredible. So that made up a little bit for the fall of their horse, Constitution Hill, in the Champion Hurdle.
Tomo, thank you very much indeed, and I'm going to come and hunt you down on Friday, all right?
Oh, lovely. And you're buying for a change.
That's fine. I'll do it. Agreed. Thank you. Thank you. I'm joined by Jacob Rees-Mogg in the studio. I feel very jealous of people who love a sport, whether it's cricket and they're on Test Match Special or it's Tomo on the racing. And what a great life they must have.
Isn't the perfect life being Henry Blofeld? That first of all, your father gets the name for Bond baddie, which is pretty good record. And then you spend your whole life watching Test matches and commentating on them so beautifully. There's exquisite commentary.
Yeah.
No, it must be an amazing way of life.
Tomo put so much energy and enthusiasm into it.
Well, as you can tell, I know nothing about racing, but listening to him, it makes it sound exciting.
No, he really... And the thrills and the spills, and, of course, jump racing, even more unpredictable than flat racing. So do you never go to the races, Jacob? Local point-to-point in Somerset, or...?
Well, I think the point-to-point's coming up in a couple of weeks. I do go to the Mendip Farmers point-to-point some years, and I've been to Ascot once or twice, but I know nothing about racing. My mother-in-law is a great expert, very much into flat racing, loves horses, fascinated by them. So I've learnt a little from her, but not as much.
And do you have a modest investment when you go?
If I go, yes, but I'm not a gambler by nature. I don't like losing money, and I don't know enough about it.
So what is coming up tonight on State of the Nation?
These ridiculous judges. So we've had this chap who's the chairman of the Sentencing Council.
Yep.
So the Lord Chancellor isn't allowed to have a view on sentencing. This is just constitutionally wrong. Parliament sets the range of sentences by law. The judges apply them in the individual case. The general policy of sentencing is a democratic matter. It's when it comes down to the individual case that it's judicial independence, and nobody's suggesting that should be interfered with. But the fact it is a mandatory life sentence for murder is set by Parliament, and these judges are just trying to get more and more power for themselves and take it away from those who are elected. And I'm strongly opposed to it.
How do we get it back? How does Parliament get it back?
Parliament legislates for it. Parliament could created the Sentencing Council. Parliament can abolish the Sentencing Council.
You could have done it in government.
Well, I couldn't have done because I wasn't in the right job.
I know that. I meant...
Yeah, but I think the mood wasn't ready for it. I think we finally realised how excessive this power is, and we're going on to Quangos too with Juniper saying we shouldn't have any more golf courses.
Oh, I know.
Because he doesn't like them.
It's all too much. It's all too much. Let's have a look at the weather and see how it's set for Cheltenham tomorrow.
Even though we'll see a cloudy start, it'll be a bright outlook for the rest of the day. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, very good evening to you. Here's your latest Met Office weather update for GB News. Now, it is going to be a bit of a chilly night ahead, and with that then, there's the risk of some frost, even some icy patches, as there will be quite a few showers around. A lot of the showers in association with a cold front that's making its way southwards, so we will see some showery pulses across parts of Northern Ireland through the end of the day, and also feeding into parts of perhaps the Midlands, but also across Wales. Quite a few showery outbreaks here, some sleet or snow over some higher ground possible. Also plenty of showers piling in across eastern parts of Scotland, northeast England, and again some sleet or snow likely here. Temperatures are going to drop, and where we get clear skies, dipping to around, if not a bit below freezing. So there could be a bit of frost around first thing tomorrow morning, also some icy stretches, so do take care on the roads. Otherwise, as we go through the morning, in the west of Scotland, it's looking largely dry, quite bright as well. Further east, more showers to come and a bit of a breeze as well, adding to the chilly feel to things. Mostly dry across Northern Ireland, but also across Northern England. In the east, it's looking pretty showery. Across the Midlands and much of Wales, a largely bright, fine start to the day, but in the far south of England, it is going to be cloudier and there will be some showery outbreaks, all in association with that front that pushed through overnight. Through the day, I am expecting more showers tomorrow than we saw through today, and with that then there's a greater chance of some heavy ones, even a few rumbles of thunder perhaps, and some more sleet and snow. Over modest higher ground we could see a bit settling to lower levels. A few flurries are possible. Temperatures are going to be lower than today, and that makes it feel pretty chilly, especially when you factor in that wind. As we go through Thursday then, more showers across eastern parts. Further west, a greater chance of staying